Well, I guess if we're talking about eras then, in the modern era, who would you say are the workers that are... Well, let's talk about, obviously we've talked about Cena and, the huge names. But in your mind, who do you see, or what type of wrestler do you see carrying the business forward? Because obviously we're in an unprecedented situation. We've talked a lot about how well Daniel Bryan adapted to the matches with no audience, for example. And he, the interesting thing about him is, like, I work for Ring of Honor, and Daniel Bryan, when he was Bryan Danielson, his, back catalogue of work has just been phenomenal for seemingly his entire career. For me personally, I would put him, right at the top of, workers around today. For you, Tom, who else is up there?
Well, I've got to mention Roman Reigns.
Yeah.
Just for the fact that he was unshakable, and he was that guy that everybody knew that he was being pushed, and he was being pushed hard.
Yeah, it's a lot of pressure. A lot
of pressure. And not just with the people in the front. I'm talking about backstage. A lot of pressure.
Well, if I could just give you a kind of personal example. When I got the opportunity to wrestle Kurt Angle, I'd only been wrestling for 3 years, including training. So there were 10 other workers who were way more experienced than me in the back to get it. And even at that level, this is an independent company, the pressure just seemed so huge at that time to deliver. So I can't even fathom what Roman Reigns felt in that moment. I guess that is the testament of a true top talent.
Right. And of course, he'd been around the business his whole life, but there were other guys who've been around the business their whole life too back there. Yep. And so I've got to name Roman Reigns right up front. Gosh, as far as this modern era, I don't even know. I admire Drew McIntyre a lot. He's a tremendous person, a tremendous talent.
He's the talent I think I probably learned most from. Where I worked a program with him very early on, and it made me realize, that I'm only operating at half the intensity I need to be. You know what I mean? Right. He educated me very quickly just by working with him.
Yes.
And he's a locker room leader. When he came back to the United Kingdom, the effect that he had on independent wrestling, it lifted the whole scene. He was like our Undertaker. You know what I mean? He was the guy. He was just the one you went to. And when he left, it definitely left a hole in the British independent scene. But we were all glad to see him be successful again,
Well, yeah, and he was the guy when he got released the first time. He was the guy that Vince said, here's the next big thing. And okay, but he was young, and he had a different look. Life has a way of opening your eyes, if you will. And when Drew got there, his eyes weren't fully opened yet. He had come from FCW, wonderful guy, great attitude. But he still was missing that element you must have. And that's part of understanding if Vince wants you to be his guy, you have to be that guy 24/7. Yeah. And a lot of that means, are you willing to do whatever it takes? And when we say that, people say, I'll do whatever it takes. I'll go to the gym. I'll train every day. Well, we're not always talking about that. Yeah. We're talking about, are you willing to take what you believe is yours? And let me see how you do it. And Drew sometimes could be that too nice a guy. And he told me the same thing, man. When he went back, it really opened his eyes that you have to be this guy. And you have to be the guy that is the Rock. I'm not talking about Dwayne Johnson. I'm talking about the solid guy that, not this guy's not going to like what you do or say, and that guy's not going to like what you do or say. But as long as you are unwavering and firm in your stance, and you make it work, and you believe it, and you have a code you live by, and not everybody's going to like it, and not everybody's going to see it, but if it makes you successful, and you're going to ruffle some feathers along the way. And that's what they mean when they say it's lonely at the top, because sometimes you got to chop this down, chop that down. You got to clear the path, and in that process, you're gonna move and remove some people who have been camping there for a long time, and they don't want to be disturbed. And you're going to kind of ruffle them and disturb them and force them to either step up or get out of the way. And that's what Drew did, and that's what I think any top guy has to do. It's not always pleasant, not always nice. Yeah. Shawn Michaels will tell you that, Razor Ramon, any of those guys during the Click era will tell you that they ruffled feathers, but you know what? They were top guys, and that's what any top guy will tell you that you have to do. You're not going to please everybody, and you're going to make a lot of people mad, but in the process, you're solidifying and cementing your legacy, and that's really what you have to do.
I remember it was on a documentary, and Batista said he was asked the question, do you want to make friends or do you want to make money? You know?
Exactly.
So I always found that to be a useful statement. You know, it's we talked previously about, you know, would it be possible to be a top guy and be, you know, a nice guy? And I think that Drew has certainly proven that you can. I look up to Drew in a lot of ways. He is just, I mean, you know, it's this thing with celebrity. We never really know who people are. But for me personally, like I can sit here and say hand on heart that he's a great person and very giving and did so much for a generation of Scottish wrestlers and British wrestlers, you know. So it's great to see him do well.
Well, once again, I do believe you can be a top guy and a nice guy and a decent guy. But there's a separation between being a nice guy, top guy, or being a nice guy and a decent guy, and then having to do business.
Yes.
And anybody who's done business understands that. And an example, going back to Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels. Look, I admire both, and I would probably hang out with Bret more than I would with Shawn. But the point is, when it came right down to this situation, and this is what I'm talking about between, you know, some guys are going to like it, some guys aren't, and you have to decide what is right for you, what is right for business, and what is going to be the right thing for you to do. For Bret, it was standing up for his principles, and the rivalry was so thick and so deep and intense that God, it just went against every fiber in him to even think about putting Shawn Michaels over. At the same time, you know, Shawn was put in a position of, here's what we're going to do. Are you in or not? And then without hesitation, he said, of course, because Shawn was all about Shawn. And that's what we talk about when we say whatever.
Do you have any thoughts on Montreal, whether who was right and who was wrong?
Both were right and both were wrong. I mean,
that's
morally,
fair.
both morally and professionally, and what's the right thing to do? Should you have screwed Bret? Well, you know, again, from a human aspect and from a moral aspect, no, it wasn't the right thing to do. But from a business aspect and taking care of the rest of the guys in the company, you had no choice, because Bret wasn't going to bend, and Shawn was put in that position. So it was a tough gig, man. But when it happened, I was watching in Stamford in the studios, and as soon as it happened, I went, "Oh my gosh, man, this is heavy."
Did you know, watching it? Did you know? The drama's about to unfold.
When I saw it, it was. I knew they'd done what they had done, and when Earl got out of the ring, especially, I went, "Oh man!" And the chaos that was about to ensue. It was crazy, but that's what the business was back then, and I don't think that would happen today, because it's in a whole different element and confines, if you will. The rivalries aren't what it used to be, because it's not the same business and it's not the same attitude. We're in a whole different world than we were back then.